All right. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all had a great break. This has been an amazing day of teaching and learning by really talented educators and innovators. I am delighted to introduce two people from our community. First, Christina Kirtley, senior producer at WNET Kids Media and Education. And I have a confession to make. My
Yeah.
children absolutely adored Cyber Chase. And
Yeah.
when I was last in your office, I got Cyber Chase stickers and pencils, and they were totally a hot commodity among my son's high school robotics team.
Oh,
So
that's
cyber
amazing.
so like the kids who are doing robotics now in high school were all Cyber Chase babies,
Yeah,
and
they all grew up on
they
it.
all
Yeah.
grew up on it, which is great.
And
So
it's
you
still
guys,
going strong.
and it's still going strong. You guys have amazing lasting impact, and it was just hysterical to see like the clamor for those stickers and pencils. I was like,
Yeah.
how old are you guys? But they love it, and I have a few left for next year. All right. So, as a senior producer at WNET's Media and Education, Christina creates educational resources, manages a national outreach, and leads professional development workshops for teachers in how to use media in the classroom. She brings a background of teaching, museum education, and project direction to her production work in educational media. In her work, Christina strives to support teachers and students using media and film. So thank you so much for being part of
Yeah.
our presentations today, Christina. Um, and then we have Scott as well. And I don't know if I have a full bio for Scott. Do I?
Well, I can tell you something about Scott.
Awesome. I can tell he's got like a great pandemic mustache going. So
Yes, yes. He warned me about that before we talked earlier this week.
my team
Uh,
members are like, they've got hats, they've got, there's a lot of
yep,
creativity going on. So
yep,
welcome, Scott, and welcome, Christina.
Thank you.
yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I mean, I can briefly introduce Scott. Scott's a high school history teacher at Brooklyn International High School and has been using Mission US for years. And he was also recently named a PBS Digital Innovator All-Star, right? This just happened this month. So congrats to him. He's one of our star teachers. So we're really excited to have him on with us today. As Tori said, I work at WNET, which if you're not familiar with WNET, it's basically the PBS company for the New York City area. And I'm also part of the team behind Mission US, which is the award-winning series of online immersive history games. So, whether you're new to Mission US or, you've been using it with your students for years, we have a lot to share today. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Let's see if I can do this. 1 second, bear with me. So, we're excited to share how Mission US can be integrated in the classroom, both real and virtual. One thing that we've really found is that it's a perfect tool during this period of remote learning. Right now I kind of feel like I have this 360-degree perspective on the state of the current educational landscape. As was mentioned before, I used to teach high school, so I feel like a real connection to you as teachers. I also have two kids, a third grader and a sixth grader, who are learning at home right now. And with my job at WNET, a lot of what I'm doing right now is finding ways to best support teachers and families with the wide range of educational content produced by PBS. So, we know that you're looking for immediate solutions to engage students in remote learning, and we really think that Mission US is going to provide some great, flexible online history resources for you. So, just to quickly go over our goals for today. We want to if you're new to Mission US or even using it for years, we're just going to quickly provide an overview of the series. We want to describe the components of all of the supporting materials that we have, all the educator guides. We want to share some tips and strategies for using the games during this time of remote learning. Scott has very generously offered to demo City of Immigrants for us. This is a game that he's done many times with his students in Brooklyn. And then we're also going to be previewing the new Mission US website, which if you're familiar with Mission US, you might already notice a kind of a new look, a new branding, just in this slide. And then we're also going to preview a new mission, Prisoner in My Homeland. So before we dig in though, just indulge me for a minute with a little imaginative exercise. So as someone who loves immersive experiences, I'm a big fan of escape rooms and choose your own adventure books. If you could travel to any time in US history, where and when would you go? Okay. You can put your answers in the chat, but I would love to hear, Scott, where would you go?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, great. I would go to the Roaring 20s.
Oh, yes. Tell us why.
I just think it was a great time in history. It'd be a lot of fun, a lot of changes. I live in New York City, so New York City was booming at the time as well.
Yeah.
Just excited about it.
That was also my answer. We should have shared our answers beforehand. The reason why is I think I'm just really looking for some escapism. 1920s New York sounds like a good time. Maybe hit the Cotton Club in Harlem, you know? Here's some answers. We've got Gilded Age, Progressive Era. I can't pick one. Somebody wants to go specifically to the Constitutional Convention. I like that. We have Roaring 20s. Oh, there's a lot for the 20s. I like this. A lot of people want to go to the 20s. We all want to escape to the Roaring 20s. The Civil War, interesting. Okay. American Revolution, got a lot of great answers. I mean, I think one thing that's really fun about Mission US, is just that you get to sort of visit these periods of US history from the past. So before we go too much deeper, I also would just want to take you way back to that time that my wagon just kept breaking down on the Oregon Trail. Do you guys remember this? How many of you remember this game? I'm probably aging myself a little bit, but this was early attempts at taking us to these periods in American history in a more immersive way. Okay, I remember the Oregon Trail very fondly. It was something I would do in elementary school. We would do it in the computer lab, but I don't remember it ever really being connected to what we were learning in the classroom. It was just this fun thing that we would do in the computer lab. And do you guys realize this game was created back in 1971? It's kind of hard to like wrap your head around that, but this is 1971 role playing, okay? So now jump ahead to 2008 and we have Mission US. So, Mission US takes the basic choose your own adventure sort of concept of Oregon Trail, but goes further to offer an interactive immersive learning experience that is actually connected to the social studies curriculum in a really like deep and meaningful way. And coming soon, I give you Mission US 2020. This is a sneak peek at the brand new website, which will be launching at the end of this month. We're getting a makeover, as you can see. We have an updated logo, website, tagline, and overall look. So, we're excited to bring you the next chapter in Mission US. So the new website, it's more than just a new look. We've created a lot of different supports that's going to make it even easier for you as teachers. There's going to be things like the ability to preview content, all the educational content. You can preview it on the screen, which I'll show you a little bit of that later. We've also created a new tagline, Serious History, Serious Games. That was also the name of the session today. If you're familiar with Mission US, students are confronted with difficult periods in American history, and they have to grapple with historical concepts and are really challenged by hard choices. So we felt like it was time for us to kind of change the tagline for the series. And so now it's Serious History, Serious Games. Okay. So even with all these changes, the core of Mission US remains the same. Okay. Mission US gets students to care about history by seeing it through the eyes of peers in their past. So instead of just reading about a key historical moment, students are part of the action. And during this time of remote learning, Mission US can still provide this deep connection to history since it's already an immersive online experience. And I think I might have mentioned this earlier, but if I didn't, everything's free. It's always been free. We're PBS. So, there's no trick here. It's all free and we want you to use it. So what I've mentioned, one of our goals today is to provide an overview of the available Mission US games. So you can make sort of an informed decision about which ones might be right for you and your students, whether you're starting to plan for next week or you're planning for the fall, okay? We're, as I said before, Scott is also gonna give us a really close look at the Mission City of Immigrants. So I wanted to just show you a quick trailer that provides an overview of the series and also gives you a little bit more about City of Immigrants. And you might just recognize someone in the video.
Oh.
Mission US is a series of online games designed to immerse young people in American history. Mission US allows students to take on the identity of a particular young person in the past. They witness key events and sometimes participate in them, and the decisions that they make along the way impact their own story. And we think this character-driven approach really resonates with young people. In this mission, we hope to deepen students' understanding of the Ellis Island era of immigration.
Isaac says New York is full of great opportunity.
Students play Lena Brodsky, a Russian Jewish immigrant who comes to New York City in 1907 and is swept up in the growing labor movement.
Was Lena on her own at this time? With students that are diverse learners and they have diverse backgrounds, you need to find different resources and avenues for the students to really get into the material. Some of them are very visual learners, some can't read very well, and by playing the games from the beginning to the end, everyone is able to bring something to our class that probably from a textbook they would miss. On the back of your paper is your first diary entry as Lena.
The website provides a variety of activities to accompany each part of the game, including review questions, document-based activities, vocabulary activities, and writing prompts. By going deep into the content, students are gaining critical comprehension, writing, and analytical skills they need for mandated assessments.
I like the game because it's like you're under the skin of that person and you're living those memories.
Mission US truly allows students to become a part of the history. For a teacher, you can't hope for better than that.
All right, so there we go. Scott, do you remember that class?
I do remember it was a couple years ago.
Yeah, this was, I think, back in 2016. So, I think it's, hold on, I'm just gonna say this. I had a question, just if people have questions, we're definitely gonna answer questions there at the end, and I'll try to answer them as I'm going, but sometimes it's easy to miss ones when they come, but I will try my best to get to them. So in addition to City of Immigrants, which you just saw a little bit of there, we currently have 4 other missions, and then we have another one that is coming soon. So I just want to quickly go over these, just give you a little bit of about each one, and then Scott is going to demo City of Immigrants. So the first mission that came out in 2008 and then was actually revitalized and totally updated in 2018, 10 years later, is For Crown or Colony. This is one of our most popular games. So students play the character of Nat Wheeler, who is a printer's apprentice who arrives in Boston just a few weeks before the Boston Massacre. So for this game in particular, it really emphasizes multiple perspectives. So he meets all these different players in the game who show him the different sides of the conflict, and then the player has to decide then which side they're going to take. So you meet loyalist merchants, who oppose colonial boycotts, Daughters of Liberty, who lead spinning bees and drink Liberty tea. And then in every game too, there's always a mix of real figures and fictional characters. So in this particular game, you meet Phyllis Wheatley and Paul Revere. The second mission is Flight to Freedom. So this one covers a somewhat broader timeline, and geography tracing the journey of Lucy King, who starts out as an enslaved person in Kentucky on a Kentucky plantation. So the narrative soon shifts to her escaping to Ohio, and it goes deep into the Underground Railroad, helping students understand how it operated. It talks about the Fugitive Slave Act, and you meet abolitionists along the way. And this game in particular, you know, with all the games, we really encourage you to preview before, like you wouldn't just assign this game to your students without first framing it. This is obviously a very difficult period of history, but if you are able to, you know, walk your students through this and really frame it and contextualize it with primary sources that are available on the website, then, you know, it really helps them to understand how different groups fought to end slavery long before the Emancipation Proclamation. So we also have Cheyenne Odyssey. This is one of my favorite games. And I can tell you that my third grader at home, my son, loves playing this game. He's played it multiple times. This takes place right before the Civil War, and it addresses Western expansion and settlement from a very different perspective. It kind of brings me back to Oregon Trail, right? Where Oregon Trail, definitely, I would say, privileged only one perspective. You don't really hear from any of the Western tribes when you're playing Oregon Trail. In this particular mission, you play the role of Little Fox, who was actually based on a real Cheyenne warrior called Wooden Leg, who left behind an autobiographical sort of a journal about changing life on the plains. And it's also worth noting that with this mission, the Mission US team collaborated with members of the Northern Cheyenne tribe to ensure its authenticity. So, you know, throughout the game's development, they worked with both professional and amateur Cheyenne actors. So all of the voice recordings, the majority of the voice recordings are actual Cheyenne actors. And they worked with cultural and historical advisors to help shape the narrative and script. So the result really is this like diverse set of characters who represent a much fuller range of Native American viewpoints than you get in textbook. There also was a real insistence, which is I think is so wonderful, that the game not only cover the curriculum and the history of that time, but also show the persistence and continuity of the Cheyenne, which is why the epilogue of this game actually stretches across several generations into the present day. So our next mission, here we go. So it's westward expansion, change and continuity over time is the historical thinking skill. And then it goes into Plains Indians, culture and history. So City of Immigrants is the game that Scott is going to demo shortly. And, you know, I'm not going to say much other than that it's set in the 20th century and it unfolds on New York's Lower East Side. Up from the Dust is, I think, perhaps the most relevant to our current moment. You know, in this game, you play twins Ginny and Frank Dunn. And for those of you, this picture gets me every time, you know, for those of you who are familiar with, you know, these kinds of photos or the WPA photos from the Library of Congress, the game really brings a lot of these images to life. Most of the story takes place in the Texas Panhandle, a region of the booming wheat economy in the 20s that was hit doubly by the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl of the 30s. Okay, so, you know, this really shows you, it gives them a really compelling way, students really compelling way to grapple with historic cause and effect, and to also build empathy with how different groups of Americans are grappling with hardships even today. You know, it's kind of eerie, like some of the similarities between what was going on during the time period of this game and for today. And then coming very soon this summer, we're preparing to launch the next Mission US game, Prisoner in My Homeland. So this mission allows students to walk in the shoes of Japanese-American teenager Henry Tanaka during World War II. So let's take a sneak peek.
The year is 1941. You are Henry Tanaka, a 16-year-old American citizen. But after the US declares war on Japan, you are seen as the enemy. The government forces you and 120,000 other innocent Japanese Americans into prison camps. Will you help your community? Support the war? Resist injustice? When your loyalty is questioned, how will you respond? Mission US. Serious history, serious games.
So like Cheyenne Odyssey that I mentioned earlier, Prisoner in My Homeland was only made possible through collaboration. So we worked with the Bainbridge Island Japanese American community, Densho, which is an archive focusing on the history of the incarceration. There was an advisory board with leading experts. In addition, staff from the National Park Service, Manzanar Historic Site, and members of the Manzanar Committee provided input on game development. So, you know, we've been very thoughtful and very careful in how we present this period. So, you know, now that you have a sense of all the curricular connections and kind of a brief overview of all the different missions, you know, I want to take a little time just to talk about how you can bring this into the classroom, both real or virtual. So, you know, usually when we talk to teachers about using Mission US, the classroom looks more like the pictures there on the left, a much more teacher-led experience with classroom discussions, you know, opportunities for more of like a shared experience in the classroom. And now, as you know, school is more like the picture on the right. You know, for every Mission US game, there's an educator's guide. And really, it's a treasure trove of education materials to use alongside the game. But we recognize that not everything can be carried over from the into the remote classroom. So we've really been giving a lot of thought to how can we create an at-home experience, like the one here on the right, that engages students on the same level. So I'm going to share how the games can easily transition to the virtual classroom, just to give you some tips. But first, I just want to, if you're not familiar with Mission US, I just want to give you a really brief overview of all the available content in the educator guides. So this is also another sneak peek at our new website. If you go to the Mission US site right now, it's not going to look like this. If you go to the site now and you click on educator, then you would be able to access these educator guides that I'm telling you about. When the new site launches towards the end of this month, then you get to see this beautiful site. And if you click on Teach, it'll give you the educator guides. And one thing that I really love about the new website is you can preview all the content. So if you want to look at the different activities, anything that you click on, you could then preview that content. We have always uploaded both a Word and PDF version of all of our education materials because we really wanted to make sure that teachers could adapt this to their needs of their own classroom. So we encourage teachers to go in and pick and choose what works best for you. And the other thing that's great, I think, right now is if you have a Word document, it's so easy to then take that activity and then assign it through Google Classroom. So the Educator's Guide has so much to offer. Sometimes it's overwhelming, there's so much. It's gonna tell you, it provides historical background essays for both the teacher and the students. There's an overview of the game, so you kind of know what happens in each part and all the different curriculum connections and about how long it takes to play each game. There are primary sources. There's so many activities. There's vocabulary. There's review questions. There's writing prompts. And there's document-based activities using primary sources. Another thing that is part of every game are badges. And this is part of sort of the gamification of history. And it also encourages students to play the game more than once. So this is just an example from Up From the Dust. One of the badges that you can get is Can-Do Attitude. So based on the choices that the student makes while playing the game, they can earn points in different badges. So this one, it says, you volunteered to help a farmer's widow with the harvest. So by doing that, you got a star for this particular badge. So one way to sort of track gameplay is to track the badges that students earn along the way. This is just an example of some review questions. It's always tied to some part, some moment in the game, and they always become more complex as you go. Some of these are just basically, just comprehension questions, just making sure that the student understood what they just played. But then it also encourages them to make connections to some of the larger themes at play. This is just an example of a document-based activity. This is also from Up From the Dust. These are some pictures from Hoovervilles, and then a chart that the students can fill out as a way for them to do a deep analysis of these images. So thinking about the remote classroom, we really think of it as like sort of a spectrum from more educator-led to more self-guided. So you could do a very high touch approach even during this period of remote learning by giving students things to do before, during, and after playing each part of the game. But then you could also go on the other side to the more self-guided approach where you just assign them the game and then have them complete it at their own pace and maybe give them one culminating activity. So, you know, a sample week unit looking at both ends of the spectrum would be to start them off with like a pre-activity, assign the game, assign the badge tracker, and then for each day, assign a different part with a different activity. And then on Friday, you would have them turn everything in and have a wrap-up discussion. You know, you could try to have a very like teacher-led experience through the week, or you could simply just assign the game on a Monday and all through the week they work on it. And then at the end, just have them maybe answer a simple prompt, like describe what happened to your player at the end of the game, or write about a difficult choice in the game. There really is so many different approaches that you can take. It's a very, very flexible. Some other tips and things that we have come up with in thinking about the remote classroom. Like I said before, all the different education materials are uploaded onto the site as Word documents. And I've done this myself. You can assign with Google Classroom. You can just upload it to Google Docs and then assign it to each student. It's very easy to do. You can assign, something else you can do is just assign it as an enrichment activity. I know my students have been doing, or my kids have had things like on Fridays, they have enrichment Fridays where their teachers try to just give them fun things to do. So it's something that could be done in a very sort of light sort of way and be like, just let's do this as an enrichment activity, choose a game that interests you. You can also encourage replaying. Like I said, with the badge system, depending on the different choices that you make, you can have a very different experience in the game. Something else that I've seen done is you can encourage students to play in pairs. And the way that can work is students can even be just FaceTiming each other or talking on the phone to each other while they're trying to play the game. Sometimes that's fun for students. And something else we want to emphasize too is that you can use it with younger and older students. This game was designed for middle school, but it works well with high school students, and it definitely works well with upper elementary. And like I said, my 3rd grade son enjoys playing the game. You can also, I think it's a really great idea to pair it with other online experiences like virtual museum tours. And I think that's something that Scott's going to talk about next. And you know, there's so many free resources out there right now, and there's ways for you to enrich the experience by, you know, using some of these other sorts of virtual online experiences. And some of these we have listed on our website. On the website, we have a tips for at-home learning, and you could kind of get some ideas there. Oops. So, I mean, there's so much that can be done. Something else one thing I forgot to say, something else this is something my son loves too, is just another idea is you could use this as inspiration for students' own history video game project. So, you know, have the students do what we did, like think about like, what's a period in American history that you would want to visit, and have them think about how they could make that into some sort of game. So it's just another idea, project-based learning. I think we've all found that during this time of remote learning, project-based learning, it's good to like lean into students' different interests. And that's just another idea that we've come up with on our team. So now I'm going to turn it over to Scott, because now you've seen sort of an overview of all the games, you've seen all these educator materials that are available, and now we want you to be able to see and experience the game itself. So Scott, do you want to take us on a little tour of City of Immigrants?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Christina. So kind of hard to follow. Christina did a really good job there, kind of going on an overview and a little deep dive into the teacher resources. I'm following the chat a little bit, and I see some people that are excited by the game or have played the game. It's really great that a lot of you have already played it. If you haven't played it, you gotta try it. As a student of history, probably you are yourself, you would probably just enjoy it as much as some of your students have used it. There's so many ways you can use it. I've used it each game over the course of a week. I've used them over the course of 3 weeks. You can take a real deep dive into some subjects that come up, or you can kind of have the kids play quickly through and just get a kind of quick understanding, a quick experience with it. So the possibilities are really endless, and I do recommend taking a real deep look at the educator guide. The educator guide has a slew of resources, more than you'll need, more primary documents than you'll need for each topic, but some you might not have seen for a couple of years as a teacher, and they might excite you, and you might replace it from one you've used for many years in a row. We're a little short on time, and I don't want to go too slowly here, so I want to go a little quick, but I do recommend if you have questions, put them in the Q&A at the bottom, just so we want to leave some time to answer some questions, because I have seen some answers come through the chat, and we'll try to answer.
Yeah, I'm trying to answer as we go. I'll take on questions right now.
All right, so just quickly, the City of Immigrants, it's a great game. It's one of my favorites. I use 5 of them every year, and this is the one that I look forward to the most. All my students are immigrants, but from about 30 different countries, all brand new to the country. So when they put themselves in the shoes of our protagonist, Lena Brodsky, it's pretty easy for them to kind of experience and feel what millions of immigrants felt over the course of 100 years. So it's focused on the immigrant experience, 1907 New York. You live on the Lower East Side. This is actually part of the Lower East Side Tenement Museum. If you ever come visit New York City, this is where she lives with her brother Jacob and his wife, and sometimes some boarders live in their apartment as well. They actually took thousands of pictures of the interior of the museum to recreate the artwork for the game, which is actually really neat. So Lena's 14 years old. A lot of the students who play it are 14 years old. It's geared for middle school. I teach 11th grade. I have some 14-year-olds in my classes. I have some 21-year-old kids in my classes, depending on their experiences. They all get different things out of it, but it's usually an enjoyable experience. My 3rd grader has used it, and he likes it as well. So you live on the Lower East Side. It's a Jewish enclave. Most of the people you're going to meet are your Jewish neighbors, Jewish pushcart peddlers. You're going to meet some Italian immigrants when you start visiting the Henry Street Settlement House on the Lower East Side. You meet some muckrakers along the way. You participate in the garment industry. You start working at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, which eventually goes on fire in 1919. You meet Clara Lemlich. She's one of the real people from history who shows up in the game, and other people, organizers of the ILGWU, which is kind of neat to introduce unionization and unions to our students. You can go to the next one, Christina. So focuses on urbanization and immigration, talks about how key turning points in immigrants' lives or people's lives and events that change the course of history for them. When your students play it, they might have different experiences. There are 3 or 4 different ways each player can go, and they'll see different things. There are key moments when you make these big decisions, these turning point decisions, and in the teacher guide, you'll see when those exist, and you can kind of make the kids really focus on those moments. So let's just go to play the game a little bit. I just want to introduce what it looks like. I'm going to share.
So you can start sharing your screen now.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. So when you get on the landing page, I'm just going to start the game. Some of you have already played it before. Each mission is set up in a similar way. Each one has a prologue at the beginning. The prologues are great. It's always a video, and it shows, introduces the characters, sets the context for the game, and what we're going to be experiencing.
When my ship arrives in New York Harbor, they will ask me my name. I will say, Lena Brodsky.
And some of the games in the prologue, they will all have this eventually. They're updating some. A pause and a restart button here in the prologue, which is I felt was really limiting at the beginning, but now it's great because the prologue really has a lot of context, and we are able to really talk about things that are going on at the beginning of this that relate to the students as well, especially the immigration game. So I'm just going to play a little bit, and then I'll skip a little bit. There's also a skip button on the right, which is useful. I would recommend the kids, you tell the kids not to skip, because sometimes if they see a skip, they get excited and they want to just get through it, and they miss some key pieces here.
When I am standing in line among the hundreds trying to enter America, they will ask, "Where are you from?" And I will say, "Minsk, in Russia." The officials will ask me many other things. Am I healthy? Have I a skill for a job? But they will not ask about why so many Jews flee to America. They will not ask why the Tsar pushed us off the land.
So hopefully just seeing, 25 seconds of that, you're already seeing places where you can go a little deeper into the history and kind of presenting the, push and pull factors of immigration, what journeys were like for immigrants coming across, how our immigrants today are traveling to our cities or states, wherever you're from. My kids all have different stories, and it's interesting to kind of have them talk about it. And then they always present the question for us to think about at the beginning, and this one is, how can an immigrant improve her family's life in America? And then it just tells you you're Lena Brodsky, you'll navigate the city of immigrants, discovering new people and places and facing obstacles along the way. There's no winning and losing, but the choices that you make will affect both your present journey and future path. I think that's important for the kids to know, that you can't win or lose, but the choices you make and the people you meet and the way you talk to different people definitely change your trajectory, just like in real life. And then they add, what will Lena achieve as a newcomer to America? Which turning points will determine her destiny? So then the part one opens up. You can't play part one until you finish the prologue. You'll see the other parts are locked. That's a good thing. I'm just going to play this. It's going to take us to Ellis Island, which is in most of your curriculums. And you could do a deep dive into Ellis Island, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. And it's really interesting for the kids to see what it was like for these immigrants versus, in New York, coming through JFK Airport and going through customs. Most of the stuff that happened for Lena happens on Ellis Island, whereas today they happen back in their home countries when the students are coming to America.
After 7 days at sea, I was exhausted. The rocking of the ship made it hard to keep down what little food I ate, and the air in our crowded quarters was foul. I was on my way up to the deck for fresh air when a man shouted, "We were close to land!" Everyone rushed to the deck to see New York come into view, and many gasped when they saw the great woman of liberty.
I'm just going to skip ahead.
We kept sailing up the river and then turned to dock.
So then she gets to Ellis Island, and this is...
We lined up in front of a big building. I did not speak English, but neither did Isaac, and he made it through.
So this is, if you've played it before, you know this, but this is what most of the game looks like. It's not a video, but it's you talking to people, making decisions, and this is the format of it. So you line up in front of the building, and at the bottom, it tells you what you can do or what you can say. You'll see that in a second. This also introduces us to our bottom of our screen, different things we have. We have a pack.
Once inside, people with big bags had to leave them. Some were afraid that the guards would steal the treasured items they had brought from home.
Right, so we have a pack at the bottom. You can see that she brought things with her. You can click on them to see what they are. There's also badges. This is where if you keep badges or get badges, you can keep track of them here. For the students to see. And there's also a smart word section. If you find a vocabulary word and you can click on it, you'll see in that scene, you get a definition, and then it goes into your smart word vault, which is kind of cool for the kids to have access to. I'm just going to pick a quick answer here. Man doesn't speak Yiddish, and if it's in yellow, it's a smart word. It comes up top, which is great, and then it goes into your smart word at the bottom. Your smart words at the bottom. So it's nice. I'm going to play one more scene.
At the top of the stairs, I saw a man putting a chalk mark on a person's coat. Was a mark good or bad?
I'm just going to ask someone what the marks mean. I have kids negotiate with a partner with these answers. Sometimes we play as a whole class and we kind of survey each other which direction we'll go. I have some students that need help reading, so I read with them. On the newest games, you can click on these and these will be read to you aloud by the computer, which is a great addition that they've made over the years. When we whispers to you, they put marks on unhealthy people. And then it comes to another point where you can take a deep dive into what do the marks, what does the inspector is looking for, the medical examiners, things like that. So I'm gonna come out of here. And you can just stop sharing the screen because we're running out of time. Christina,
yeah, I'm going to share again. You just had a few tips. Do you want to talk about how you've used it with your students?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways I use it with my students, but most of them follow the format this way. This is how one of my Google Docs would look like. For each section of the game, I have a part 1 where I usually have the students come in mission 4, especially to have them compare and contrast to their own life. What did Lena do? What was it like for them? Their first day in New York, their first day eating a certain food, their first time taking transportation. Really interesting to hear the similarities between the students and Lena. If you teach immigrant students, you'll have those types of experiences. If not, they could ask their grandparents or great-grandparents or a family member to kind of do like a little oral history project as well. Then the second part on my doc, usually there's the badges earned. This comes out of the educator's guide. I have them keep track of what they experienced, the people they met, the places they visited, the events that happened. I feel if they don't have a piece of paper in front of them when they're doing it, they'll forget at the end. So a tip, if you haven't used it before, is to have something to keep track of this, a pen and paper, or sometimes I have them split their screen and have the Google Doc open and the game playing on the left-hand side or right-hand side. Part 3, this comes out of the educator guide. There's so many vocabulary words that are new to the students. The discussion questions, or these are also called review questions. And then part 4 and 5, I put them in blue just to highlight that those are things that I bring to the game that are outside experiences. They're interactive tours, YouTube videos, or history.com videos. And I pick each part of the game. I have a different kind of extension piece where they go and look a little further at something and experience something in a different way. And they love it, and it's great. A few people talking about like how long it takes to play each game, and I think it varies for students. I think Mission US has between 20 and 25 minutes, a lot of the different parts. Some parts are quicker than others.
Yeah, we usually say it takes about an hour to play each game.
The whole thing, yeah.
Yeah.
I have kids go really fast, and I have some kids take their time, and
right.
They have different experiences, and some have the same experiences, depending on. But I do, like, sometimes when there are 4 choices to answer a question, and sometimes they don't read all 4 of them, and you know, it changes the game because you can't go back and make a different.
I also had some questions about our language translations built in. So there are no language translations at this point built in, but we find that the game is really great for English language learners because they have the text on the screen. You can click on it, which then they can hear the words being spoken. And I'm sure, Scott, you probably have, I mean, your whole school is English language learners. So yeah. What do you find?
It's so visual. Everybody sees something and can pull something out of it. I don't even think they need, you could play through the whole game without reading the bottom of the screen, just clicking a button, and the students can get so much out of it. It's so visual and interactive and engrossing.
Great. Do we have any more questions? Let's see, I'm just looking at the chat.
I just recommend everyone playing through it. I mean, they're fun. I really can't wait for Prisoner in My Homeland.
I know, it's really good.
And each game is getting better and better and sharper and sharper. The artwork is getting better. And I saw a few people mention in the chat about the civil rights movement. That's a dream of mine. I think it's a dream of many people at Mission US and Electric Fun Stuff that builds the games.
Yes, we are working towards that for sure.
It's definitely on the brain of many people.
Yeah, this is just a quick thank you to our funders and partners. I know we're running out of time, but I also wanted to just put up our URL and just encourage teachers to follow us, to email us at missionus@13.org if you have any questions or suggestions. And we always love to hear from teachers.
And come back soon for the new website and the new game.
Yes, a few weeks, it's going to launch. It's beautiful. We love it. Thank you.
Christina and Scott, thank you so much for a thorough presentation. And it's a delight to see how Mission US has evolved. It's something that I've followed for many years, and the breadth and depth of what you've accomplished is really quite incredible. And it was wonderful to hear how it's used in a classroom. So that was incredibly useful, and I'm excited for the new website and can't wait to see some of the new things. Our next presentation starts at 6 o'clock, and it's Jeremy Reel, who's the Global Ed Project Manager and Game Developer. So he will start at 6 o'clock. It is now past 5 o'clock on the East Coast, so those of you who would like to grab a mocktail or a cocktail, there's no judgment here, or a little bit of something to eat while you're finishing up the conference, we would be remiss if we didn't remind you to all get a little dinner. So I'm still drinking my sparkling water here, but you can all go get something for yourselves and enjoy your dinners. We'll see you back here at 6 o'clock. One other note, all late participants who were looking for their voters ed or election edge registrations, those are now live, and you will be in the student account for the balance of tonight, and you will be converted to a teacher account in the morning. So those are now all live for the people who were late registrants. So go ahead, vote early, vote often, to quote Elizabeth from earlier today, and we will see you back at 6.